A couple of my friends, independently from each other, asked me why I never record anything in English, and I thought to myself, maybe occasionally it's good to share something in English as well. Obviously, English is not my first language, right? So I'm not and will never be as fluent in English as I am in Polish. So that's one of the reasons. But the second reason is also that here in the States, people are kind of more familiar with the ways in which people travel. They've seen more, and what follows, they might be more familiar with certain tricks. So I kind of feel like it might be a little more beneficial to my Polish-speaking friends who might not be exposed to certain things. Regardless, I wanted to say a few words about why I do what I do. For those who've seen, some posts, I love traveling, right? I've always loved traveling, but my parents never really had money, to travel. So we never really went far when I was in Poland. And my first trip abroad was the trip to the US for the work and travel program, which was the sat down, I watched this documentary, and never before and never after did I see anything that struck me so much like this one, right? This documentary. I was so fascinated and blew away by what I just saw that I knew that this is something that I would like one day try,